Awesome. Hello, everybody. So we will get started and hop right into the webinar. Just a little introduction here. We're going to be running these Camino panel series every 2 weeks. You'll see different Camino members on each of the panels. You'll see 3 of them, whether they're agencies, freelancers, or eventually businesses and partners as well. We really wanted to do this to help our different members get connected, as well as learn different things that have made other members successful within the platform. So today our episode is called Finding Your Community, and it's all about networking and how Cara, John, and Nick have successfully networked within Communo and found success in different ways. So I will start by introducing Cara, let her give a little quick blurb about herself and then follow on to Nick and John.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Mccullen. I own a company called People Core, C-O-R-E. We deal with people, not surprisingly, any part of the employee experience. So when you start in a corporate job, and anything from recruitment and onboarding through all of the professional development training to offboarding. And so we really focus on people and help companies better serve their people internally. We're based out of Calgary, Alberta, and I've been a member of Communo since 2018. That's about it. Hey, anything else? Miss anything?
No, I think that's great. On to Nick.
Yeah, so I'm Nick Dank. I'm the CEO and a co-founder of a creative agency called Suits and Sandals. We call ourselves a brand communications agency. Really, our kind of focus is being a hybrid between a communications consulting firm and a creative agency. So we help our clients by doing research and discovery work to help them understand their position in the market, develop a brand identity, develop a brand story, understand and segment their customer base, understand their competitors, and then basically from all of those insights, we develop, kind of an action plan that includes a lot of different creative services, everything from brand identity design through to UX UI for both web and app development, video, other types of creative work. It's kind of like a full service approach, and we do a lot of digital transformation work as well. Kind of taking opportunities to improve operational efficiency and business through technology and design. We're based out of Brooklyn, New York, and we've been on Communo for just about 3 months.
Hi, I'm John. I own a branding studio called Backcountry Branding. I'm a solopreneur, so it's just me. Communo is a perfect fit that way. I help driven entrepreneurs grow their business by guiding them through our brand building process that will clearly differentiate them from the crowd. Simply put, brand identity and brand strategy. I've been on Communo since day one, so that's about 4 or 5 years.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'll pass it off to Denon here.
Awesome. So we're going to get started with the questions. So we're going to start with Cara, then we're going to move on to Nick, and then John, last but not least. So kind of just to get started, can you kind of tell me what does community mean to you? How do you use it? And how does Communo fit into your community?
I have a kind of a unique perspective on that, I think, which is pretty cool in that I think really marketing, design, the whole brand thing is really what a lot of freelancers are kind of attracted to Communo for. And for me, it's, I seem to be one of maybe just a handful of other people who actually do internal engagement as far as the employee experience and development goes. And really it's a testament to, how the power of networking, regardless of really if you have a community there or not. When I joined, I was the only one that did anything, quote unquote, HR. But for me, being a new solopreneur, it was a way for me to be able to get into really the heartbeat or the pulse of business. you know, and I'm sure other people, you know, have or are experiencing that is, you know, it's, you know, where do you turn to and where do you go? Like there's a lot of community programs, but where do you meet like the cool people who've already done it, who are going to be real with you and take the time with you and sit with you, and you can, you know, drive with them and ask them like the honest questions and not have to be suited up sitting in a panel like somewhere, you know, getting talked at by some presenter. And so for me, my brother is part of Communo still. He joined before I did. He runs in-front marketing. And I would go to his office in the Communo building before I knew what Communo was. And so it was through that experience of going to see him, and I kept meeting people and everything. Everyone was super cool and friendly and having chats with people. And I was like, holy shit, am I networking? Like, is this what networking is? And so, you know, I joined Communo and I sat through webinars and I started to have conversations, and I know Nick, because I see Nick all the time on the Slack channel. You know, all of the different channels and resources and tools that Communo have, you know, I've been on and active in, and they had this little bot that would connect you with on a thread that was called Better Together. And, you know, every 2 weeks it would pair you with a new person, and I would go, and it wouldn't matter if I didn't have an absolute clue in heaven what that person did, because I'm not part of, you know, brand or design and marketing. I don't know anything about that world, but I would go to meet new people and to understand what other people did and to understand the inner workings of what they did for their business and to learn from them and their background and how they got to where they are and how they overcame hurdles. And really been doing that full time since 2018. And through that have literally had an upward trajectory of learning. And so, you know, the value there for me, I've actually quantified it as far as like what I've gotten back in return from Camino as far as actual numbers. But even above and beyond that, you know, having something to fall back on, and having that cheerleader in your corner and having people that you trust that you can go back to is absolutely phenomenal. And so for me, just some of those numbers, I've had 9 referrals. I have 3 clients that I work with consistently. I've made over $35,000 in revenue from Camino, like solely from Camino, like that through my connections there. And I've hired 2 people that have done work on and off. So, I mean, and this is for me in an industry that, I mean, connected to a pulse of what looks like something that would be a place I wouldn't fit, certainly is not the case. So, yeah, Nick, you can probably add a whole different perspective 3 months in, right?
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, as I mentioned in the intro, like I've only been on, my team has only been on Communo for just a few months. So in terms of like how Communo fits into our kind of sense of community, you know, I don't have any of those sort of stats to pull out or anything like that. But that said, but that said, I mean, I would say this. So like obviously, as someone who's a business owner in the creative space, you know, you have kind of this focus and, you know, dual focus in how you can develop a community. On one hand, you know, obviously talent development, whether that be hiring people for your team or hiring freelancers in the case of, you know, either expanding your team, or maybe you have a company that, you know, you're a solopreneur, that type of vibe where you solely rely on, you know, freelancers and outsourced work. Either way, you're thinking about developing talent, developing the right kind of talent. But then on the other side, you know, of course, like you're always thinking about developing new business as well. And, you know, I think particularly in the world of marketing, advertising, and creative, there's, I think, like very kind of good camaraderie across the board, regardless of whether or not you are in a community like Communo or not. You know, there's agencies out there that specialize in different things. And so there's a lot of, you know, development of relationships with other agencies for referrals and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, I think when you're starting to talk specifically about, where does Communo fit into that, and where do maybe some other platforms or services out there fit in to that development of both talent and also new business. You know, from my perspective, from my experience, we've kind of used other services in the past for both, right? Like separate things like Upwork for developing relationships with freelancers, and, you know, like lead gen services, for example, for trying to, you know, develop new business. And I think that generally speaking, we've had limited success across the board in feeling like we're really getting kind of the best fit for what we're looking for. You know, with Upwork and those types of like, you know, kind of freelancer platforms, you're sort of hyper kind of focused into the platform. They don't let you leave it, right? So like if they're an Upwork freelancer, you can't ever talk to them outside of the platform. It makes it really difficult to develop like a relationship with a freelancer. It's kind of like a transactional thing. You get them to do one job, like maybe you can go back to them, but you're not really able to like kind of get a bunch of individual freelancers and sort of like graft them onto a team or create a team out of them in a way that is meaningfully impactful and efficient for the type of production work that we might, you know, do for our clients. And then similarly on these like kind of lead gen type of services, you know, it's very transactional, and we've had very, very limited success in actually developing any new business that way. But then you talk about, you know, a system like Communo and kind of like a community based in Communo, and there's really, because like you take the shackles off of like, you know, having a relationship with these people, you're not trying to control it. It actually makes it possible to do that. It makes it possible to have, you know, a relationship, to develop some sort of, you know, understanding of like, what do you offer? What do I offer? How can we help each other on an ongoing basis? And I think that like things like the Communo agency Slack channel, for example, has made it so that way I've actually started to develop relationships with people that's not solely based on work, and not transactional, not like, hey, I have this project, can you help me? But more so just like understanding what people do for fun, you know, what they do for work, and then getting a better sense of like, you know, who do we fit with and that kind of thing. And that makes it a lot easier to then feel like you're actually part of the community and not necessarily just, you know, going on there to like, yeah, be 100% transactional. But you still have the opportunity to kind of discuss those points of business, to develop relationships with freelancers and agencies, to potentially get new work. You know, I should say, you know, up till now, we haven't actually gotten any new business from Communo, but like, again, we've only been on there for 3 months and we've discussed plenty of things with plenty of people. So, you know, I really see the benefit of it from that perspective in going in both directions, and also not being kind of this thing that is like solely focused on, you know, getting a quantity of leads without developing like a quality of relationship, you know?
So my community on Communo is relatively tight, but I've been growing it quite a bit. Like I started my business around the same time that Communo launched and around the same time that I joined Communo. So I really saw the potential of building that style into my, my business structure, or how I operate. Essentially, the idea is that Communo lets me stay super nimble. So I'm a one-person team, but for every project I do, I'm building teams of roughly around 3 to 4 people. At the very least, I would probably have a team of 2, and maybe 10% of projects I would do by myself. The idea is that I can definitely be hiring the same people. We'll talk about that stuff later. But it's more that I can build specialized teams for whatever project I'm working on. And I love the idea of being able to specialize, not just vertically, but also horizontally. So I can get someone that's very good at copywriting, but I can get someone that's very good at a specific type of copywriting in a certain industry. And so that's where I've really benefited from. I have been hired a couple times, and obviously we all want to be, well, I shouldn't say all of us. Most of us want to be hired, and we see the benefit of that in Camino, but there's a real benefit in being able to hire other people. and build out that network and your capability. I am also a very firm believer, like you can do really good work on your own, but I think your best work is done in a team. And even if it's just simply bouncing ideas off of someone else, even if you came up with all the ideas, being able to say it out loud and get feedback is absolutely critical. It's in my experience, it's night and day when I've got someone on board that we can talk it through versus me just trying to work through my own ideas. So in that way, I see it as a major, major benefit. I've done things like we will build a team and pitch a project together. I've hired someone once I've got a project. I've been hired by someone once they've had a project. There's so many different ways that you can work together. The idea is that Communo really can allow you to fill those gaps. You also have a safety net in terms of if you're going to go out and reach out to a bunch of people, you get so many applications that you can vet pretty quickly without wasting time. And I hate wasting time. So that's one thing that I've had a good experience. So even if you get bad applications, you can just vet that stuff so quickly.
Awesome. Well, thank you, John. Thank you guys all. That was fantastic and insightful. I'll pass it off to Denon again here.
Yeah, I thought that you guys all had really good insights. I really liked how Nick kind of talked about how he tries to go further than just professional and tries to learn about what they're into in their personal lives. So I think that's a good leader into our next question, which is how do you recommend new members make connections on the platform and kind of how do you do it? So some of you talked about Slack. So if you guys could all go into that, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think that it's cliche, but like you get out of it what you put in. It's certainly one of those things where it's an organic entity. And to Nick's point, it's more than just a transactional platform. So, the more that you put into it, the more that you offer others as well, the more you're gonna see out of it. My strategy with all things, so whether it's a potential new client or if I'm networking or just meeting someone for coffee, is I go into it really with the pure expectation that I'm just there to get to know someone and to learn about what their needs are. And if I can help them and they can learn from something that I've done in my past or that my services or products, great. If they can't, great. It's like not everyone's gonna like you. That like as soon as I learned that 10 or 15 years ago, it kind of stays front of mind. Like I'm not for everyone. My services aren't for everyone. Certainly being part of Camino opens up what I can offer my clients. I think that is super valuable. When it comes to employee experience, it's never just a one-off solution, like everything with employees or from what I found with working from other members with Communo is, in marketing and brand strategies, if your employees don't buy into that, good luck. I mean, forget it. You're not going to roll that out. If you don't engage your people hate you because your processes suck. Then forget it. You're going to be sunk. No one's talking nicely about you who works for you behind your back on the internet. If you haven't taken the care and attention that they've needed to like foster the, camaraderie and spirit and engagement internally. So for me, it's absolutely joining the member blenders. Those moved online. Being part of that, even the breakout groups. I mean, people that I see and have met in person before COVID, and then even in the breakout rooms, I learned something new about what they have to offer. I know that people don't know that people like me exist, and I'm sure a lot of people get that as well. Like, oh, you're an independent, contractor who works with people. What? I never knew that, and I say that every single time I'm in a member blender. Every single time I'm on Slack and I read something and I look at someone's profile, I often will just go to the Communo app and just search through keywords to see what other people have tagged in their profiles, to just read about what other people can do. That's one, so that I can offer the best services I can to my clients. I can pull people on board because I know, and two, because I've got a thirst and a quench of knowledge of understanding how other people work and what they do, because life is cool and interesting, and so there's lots. I mean, but foundationally, looping back to the beginning, is you get out of it what you put into it. So if you're just thinking that putting a profile up on the app and then you're waiting for people to come knocking on your doors, you're laughing. I mean, like it's not enough. You know, you have to get out there, meet people, put the time in. Yes, meet people for coffee. Who cares if you don't know who they are? You know, imposter syndrome and your ego and a fear of failure. All of that shit is gonna sink you, and Communo is perfect for that, because you can meet people. They're not going to judge you. You can say, guess what? I don't know what your industry is, and I don't know what you do, because I do it all the time, and vice versa. And it's just about getting over the initial fear at the beginning of not knowing how to network or what to say to people, and working through that. And then it becomes easy.
Well, awesome, Kara. Thanks for sharing insights. On to Nick.
Yeah. So a few different things. So thinking specifically about Communo, and also kind of more generalized, you know, like suggestions or recommendations. The more generalized one would be, I think a lot of people kind of in theory, or in their own mind, when they're reaching out to others for networking purposes, they're doing it, you know, to like be friendly and, you know, develop a relationship, but they're also like, ultimately, of course, they want to get something out of it, right? And that might be getting some more work, or, you know, developing a relationship that can return, you know, result in referrals or whatever it might be. Like, it's always going to be a business, you know, a business move, right? And so I think with that kind of being at the foundation, at the root of your intention in terms of networking with people, you know, you can have this perspective that like, oh, like I want to connect with others so I can help them, but helping them really helps me. That's something that, you know, oh, if I'm helping this other person, like I'm going to make money off of that. You know, like if you offer a service, you're offering that service to a particular, you know, other community member or whatever it might be. If you think of it from that perspective, inherently it's still selfish. Like it's still something that, you know, if you're not executing it the right way, can be taken as, you know, you're just trying to make this connection to benefit yourself. And I think that, you know, keeping in mind, really trying to internalize this concept of doing things for others that really is in some ways, or if possible, like a selfless act, is a good way to you know, develop, you know, good relationships, or something that doesn't have anything to do with whatever business you're in, right? So if you make your initial connection just based on, you know, what books are you reading, or, you know, whatever, then you can kind of develop a, you know, a connection that's more personal, and then you can always circle it back to business. But if you do it that way, it doesn't feel like you're, you know, cold calling someone essentially, you know, through an app. And something like Communo, you know, it's great that there's this like kind of member network. You can view people's profiles and then you can reach out and chat to them. But when you reach out and chat to them, if all you're going to say is like, here's what I do, here's what I'm all about, like, is there any way that I can help you? Then it's just going to seem like, you know, you're sending out a very similar message on LinkedIn, and everybody hates those, right? So try to like actually connect with people and do something for others, which brings me to a Communo specific thing, which is the generosity functionality. I found that by participating on that, you know, you can make a lot of really great connections that, again, like may not necessarily be based in business, but could eventually result in something that can benefit you, you know, maybe a couple of days, weeks, or months down the line. And it's really about developing like these kind of personal relationships. So there's been people that, you know, post up looking for like a cookie recipe, and like you can have a conversation about cookies, and then like that could turn into something later, you know. And you do kind of have to put the legwork in. You know, it takes a little bit more time to go about it in this direction, but at the same time it's more effective. So, you know, just really be thinking about like how you can be genuinely helpful to others, and not be thinking about like, what can you get out of it? Because what you can get out of it will eventually come. It's like, if you spend the time, like, it'll happen. But just don't try to be like greedy and just constantly focusing on yourself, because it's just not going to work, especially not in today's climate. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Now we'll pass it on to John here.
Yeah, I would echo everything that Kara and Nick have said. I think it's really key to have that mindset going into it, that you're there to give, and the community aspect. Definitely as a solopreneur or someone who's on my own, like, community is huge, right? Even just being able to chat and stuff. So I have really benefited from that. But what I've found with making the connections that are going to really stick business-wise, the single differentiator to the ones that have been really successful and the ones that have faded is getting the first project under your belt. If you can do a project together and work together, that's where I have personally have experienced you get to know someone the best in terms of working relationship. And when you get that comfort, maybe this is just me, but when you get that comfort of how you can rely on somebody and what they work like, it's so much easier moving forward. And so the people that are in my inner circle that I work with very regularly, that's when it switched, when you got that first project together. And it can be scary, especially if you're used to doing most stuff in-house. But yeah, once you get to that point, it's just crazy how much it goes uphill that way. So yeah, I would still reach out to people, have those conversations, have a virtual coffee, get to know people. That's kind of the way that you can get to know as many people as quick as possible, and then follow up on those relationships. And then the other thing, perspective wise, because I've talked to some people, and I've, like Kara, for example, like I have no experience in HR. So I'm like, she'll explain what she does, and I'm like, I don't get it totally. But what's helped me in those scenarios is if I can see how you are helpful to my clients, right? Not necessarily helpful to me, because I'm not really going to subcontract anything to Kara and so on. But if I can at least understand how you help my clients, then at the very least, I can send referrals. I've done quite a few of those. And then the best case scenario is, okay, well, I'm working with a client. They have this issue. Let's pull Kara and we can work together on it. And I've got no experience in that, but I don't need to have experience in that. Yeah. So that's been a helpful mindset to see what do they provide that would strengthen my team in how we can team up. Right. And so then a lot of my conversations that way have been very focused on the other person, but with the ear that's trying to see what's the value that they're going to add to my clients.
Awesome. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you all. Again, we're going to do a speed round for the last question. For everybody who's watching, please send all your questions through. We're going to go into a Q&A period after this. So you have about 10 seconds from each of you to answer the next question. Do you have a cohort on Communo? Yes or no? And do you go to them regularly? And kind of just like why?
Well, yes and no. I mean, as I said before, everyone is in my cohort, but yeah, but for projects that relate to like voiceover work, for example, for e-learning projects, yes. I mean, I have certain people that I go to internally. And I would continue to go to them. But when it comes to business acumen and learning and questions about or advice, I also have people that I've met through Camino, through the member blenders that I go through just to decompress some days and vent. So yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I joined Communo with the express purpose of developing that type of cohort. So like for us, we really wanted to work with a software engineering agency because we have some engineering people on our team, but we wanted to like have a lot more capacity to do technology work because it's a huge component of what we do. So the reason I joined Communo was to immediately get started on developing relationships with other agencies that provide software engineering. And it's been hugely successful. We have like a really great partnership with another agency that we met through Communo that like at this point, pretty much any new engineering project that comes in, as long as they have the capacity, it's going right to them. And we're continuing to develop those types of relationships kind of in as many areas as we can, because we really love process, like really like hammering down workflow. And once you work with a team once or twice and you develop that kind of like understanding, like just keep going back to them and it'll just get more and more efficient. That's our focus. So yeah, that's kind of like the biggest reason why we joined Communo, and it's like the biggest, you know, kind of focus for us going forward.
Awesome, thank you. And on to John.
Yeah, so I think I've got a group of about 6. Now I've worked with probably say 12 people in Camino, and none of them have been bad experiences, but 6 would be a relatively core group. And then 3 of them are like super core, like regular basis on 80% of projects, at least one of those 3 people are involved. So it's very regular. What I find is some projects just move fast and you can't rebuild a process or anything. So you got to move to those people really quickly. You know the work, you trust the work, you work really well together. So you go to them really quickly. The times that I expand beyond the people outside is if there's a new area of specialties or of specialty that I'm looking for. If there's a new service that's needed that I haven't worked with before, I'll put it out to Communo. Or if one of my people are too busy, right? And so to be able to expand that way. So yeah, I think it's important to really build that team. You can't just have a new person every single time. I think it's very inefficient, but you also are careful to not get too stuck on just one person. And I think naturally that's not the case.
Nice, awesome.
Awesome. So we have a few questions from our chat. So we'll go through kind of any panelist who wants to answer it can answer it. So Patrick asked, how much would you say that you network per week on Communo? So is there a certain amount of time you allocate to networking each week?
Not enough.
It was much better before COVID, you know, because I would make an effort to actually I would go to the Communo building and I would work out of there because you can rent spaces, right? So I would go to say hi to people and like touch base with all the Communo, you know, admin, like just everyone around, and then, you know, spend some time. But I would say like every Monday, I make sure I check Slack. Like Nick said, the Generosity app, I'm always on there seeing if I can, you know, respond or add value. Member Blender is every second Thursday night. And so I go to those as best as I can. But again, COVID has been difficult because children and evenings, you know, I'm stuck at home now with kids. So, and then what else? What do you guys do?
I mean, yeah, in terms of the amount of time that I spend, I typically check Communo, you know, 2 or 3 times a day. It's kind of like, honestly, like I equate it to checking in on social media, like Instagram or something like that. Like I'm on it every day, all day, but I'm not really on it all day. Like it's like if I have a 5-minute break, I'll just like log in, see if any new work's been posted, if anybody's posted anything up on Generosity. I check the Slack really quick, see if anybody has posted anything on there. And I treat it like any other digital community that I'm part of. So it's kind of like, I don't know time-wise how long I spend, but as far as like actively networking, like reaching out to other members and stuff like that, you know, in terms of like introducing myself, I'm really not into that just yet. Like I mentioned before, you know, I had a very like specific task. As soon as we joined up, we created our profile, and then we just started looking for software engineering firms. We started like, you know, scheduling meetings with them and stuff like that. You know, that's something that we did like first month that we joined up. But since then, we haven't really been, you know, kind of like reaching out to people and doing that kind of like super proactive kind of like outreach style networking. It's just been more like, you know, being a member of the community, participating when things are going on, that kind of thing. I don't, you know, admittedly join any of the events that Kara was talking about. I've never even heard of a member blender, so I'm glad that I know about that now. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's not something that I spend a ton of time on, but the time that is spent, I think has been, you know, really useful.
Awesome. I'm just going to hop in quickly before you, John, just explain what a member blender is. So Member Blender before COVID was when people came to the Camino buildings and we had a networking event in the buildings. Due to COVID, we can't have the in-person meetings anymore. However, we do have a national online assembly. So that is posted every week or every 2 weeks in our events chain. It's posted in the Slack as well as on the app. Anybody can attend, and you'll be put into smaller focus groups as well. So you can have one-on-one conversations with groups, as well as just have a big overall group talk in general. Awesome. And I'll pass it back to John.
Sure. So yeah, I relied heavily on the blenders pre-COVID. I also tried to do once a week, like get to know somebody, but that was very unrealistic for me. So once a month was possible. So I was trying to meet one new person a month, which felt good. And that's interactions with people that I don't currently know. It kind of interactions with people I know is very regular. And then, yeah, the blenders were great. And then once COVID hit, it's hard because I'm in Eastern time zone, 3 small kids at home. So evenings are not possible at all. So I've noticed it's been harder since COVID actually. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd actually like to jump back in as an agency member. I don't think that this is available to other types of members, but the Slack channel for agencies, I spend a decent amount of time on there. There's some members that are on there that like do a really good job of like community management. I don't even think that they work for Communo, but like this guy Michael is always posting up questions and like I'm answering them. You know, it's kind of like really engaging. So I actually wish that there was more activity on Slack because the types of like, you know, question and answer events that happen on there and like, you know, conversations that happen on there are really, really cool, really interesting. And I would spend a lot more time doing that if there was more of that going on. But, you know, like I said, I think that's only for agency people. But that type of thing, like this is kind of more directed towards Rowan and Denon. Like that's the kind of thing I want to see more of from Communo. Like that would be really, really cool. And I think it'd benefit members a lot more as well. It's really awesome stuff.
Yeah, we've been looking into the possibility of having just a general Communo Slack. That's still in the works, but we will let you know if anything changes.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Any final questions from our audience before we wrap up? I'll give you guys a couple minutes. I'd love to hear some final thoughts, any final suggestions that you guys have for our attendees today about networking on Communo.
I would say be super clear on what your complementary or adjacent industries are and really target people in those industries. Like be intentional.
Fair, awesome. Nick?
John brought up a good point, right? About how like he didn't know what I do. And so you have to learn the value of what I did in relation to what he did. And I learned that actually, you know, even if you're brand new to business, like Camino is the place where you can get your pitch down and how you can practice it and get feedback, right? Like how you talk about what you do, it's almost better if people don't know, because then, you know, they're going to tell you, you'll see their eyes glaze over and they're like, what in the hell? And so what I learned to do is ask the people what they did. And then I would explain my offering in relation to what they did, exactly what John said, because too many times I know all the jargon and lingo, I can explain what I do, but it means nothing. It's like, just like words, randomized and spat out. And people still are like, what the hell are you talking about? So it's like, so you know how you do marketing? So then I do, you know, and you can shift your perspective. And so it's a great challenge for you to see if you can make what you do clear to people regardless of their backgrounds. And so I think that there's great value in that for sure.
Yeah, clarity is critical. The one thing actually I'll add that I don't think we've touched on at all is be very clear on what your niche is. Communo is more successful when you're niched, not broad, because I'm not hiring any jack of all trades through Communo. That's not why I'm on Communo. So if you can be very clear on what you're really good at and what you're specific about, and then like Kara said, practice that, I think you'll get a lot of value.
They're awesome. Passing it off to Nick, and then we have one more question. Oh, 2 more questions.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add, actually. So we can just go ahead and go to the other questions.
Awesome. I'll let Denon hop into them.
Yeah. So Franz asked, "What is your go-to opening line to start a conversation with a Communo member?" So kind of what's your like go-to pickup line?
Oh, I say, well, before COVID, it was, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? I mean, I wasn't like just normal. Like, you want to go grab a coffee? I don't know. I don't think I was very creative with that. Or a member blender. I would literally just walk up to people and say, hey, I'm Kara. You know?
Yeah, I think I have a, I hope this doesn't come across as rude, but I have a little bit of a problem with the idea of a go-to opening line to start a communication that would be applicable to working with, or, you know, starting a conversation with anyone. I think it's super important along the lines of like clarity and everything that we've just been talking about. It's super important to like not have it be like this same go-to line that you always have. Like if you're going to be talking to someone and you're not focusing on yourself, you're talking about them, right? And so each person that you're talking to, if you do a little bit of research into like what they do, some of the projects that they've done, if you look at the company that they work for, whatever it might be, you take a look at their, you know, freelance portfolio or whatever, like you're going to have something specific and unique about them that you can give them a compliment about or ask them a question about. That's your opening line, you know? Ask the question, give them a compliment, and then from there, let the conversation start. And then you can start talking about like, you know, what you do. Do you want to get coffee? Do you want to jump on a Zoom call? You know, whatever else it is.
Yeah, I agree. I keep the opening fluid. So I don't have necessarily a go-to opening line, but what I always want to get to is what problem do you solve? Like, don't tell me the categorical industry things that you do. Like marketing means nothing that way. Like, tell me what you do and how it's different than everyone else in the industry. And then that's how I'm going to be able to understand the best how it relates to me and to my clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, really good insights there. And then just our final question here. In terms of building your profile, did you look at other profiles for guidance? And I think it's a really interesting question because obviously your profile is what attracts you to start a conversation with someone. So do you have any tips for that?
Yes.
No.
I looked at everyone's obsessively. And I looked at the people that I know were who I knew were prolific in our community and who were well connected. And I wrote and rewrote and then gave to people to reflect on. Yeah, I obsess over things like that, unfortunately. But yeah, I really honestly read like probably everyone's profile at that point when I was building mine.
Awesome.
You know, I'm trying to recall, but I don't know if I may have looked at a few other members' profiles just to kind of get a little bit of a reference. But the thing is that like my company, what we really do is help businesses kind of understand themselves and create like an identity for themselves. So when you do that, you have like a host of techniques for developing your own messaging, developing the way that you want to talk about yourselves, the way that you want, you know, other people that are in your audience groups to like understand and internalize who you are. And so, you know, we've gotten that down, and like, that's the way that I talk about Suits and Sandals and myself to anyone. And so I have this like toolkit of messaging that I use and kind of draw from. And that's where, you know, the sort of, that's where the, you know, Communo profile, you know, production content production, I should say, came from. And I would say that like, you know, that's a piece of advice is like really kind of understand yourself and like have a story that you want to tell. And then that's where, you know, whether it's on LinkedIn or Communo or anywhere else, that's where it comes from. You know, you can augment it based on who the audience is and what their kind of specific needs are, what their challenges are. But it really should be rooted in sort of, that foundational understanding of yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Like you could definitely reference people. So I'm not saying don't look at other people, but don't follow their template because I really think you need to be different. So if a bunch of people are doing something, you should intentionally not do that thing. That doesn't mean you're breaking the rules just to break the rules, but drill your message down so clear to the point that it's actually different. if that makes sense. Like it can categorically be the same. Marketers are marketers or copywriters are copywriters, but build yourself to become the only person in Communo that actually does that one thing.
I found value in researching because I find my stuff is very formal and very jargon filled with my industry, because I tend to be hired by people who know what I do. And so for me, it was very important to understand tone, like what is it, first person, third person, like stuff like that. I found, and I continue to find through Communo, it's far more colloquial and less formal than the corporate world, which I came from. And so I had to learn how to, like John said, really trim the excess fat off, and there's a lot, get to what you do and do it in a way that's super clear. And so I think it depends on, who you talk to, who your audience is, and making sure that the language and the tone and stuff is appropriate for people. You don't want to kill them in the first 3 lines. They're like, forget it. I'm done with you.
That's super insightful, because like you already identified that like what you do is very different from what everyone else on Communo does. And so when you're speaking to your audience, like knowing what they expect, what they want to hear, what makes sense to them is really important. So actually, I think that your approach is kind of the same approach that I would recommend taking if you're breaking into a new market. And that's essentially what you did, right? Like, I think that that's really, really, really smart idea.
Well, I learned from all of you, so thank you. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for that insights. I just want to touch on one thing, just for Patrick there as well. You should have like your base profile, which you're usually leaving up for on a regular basis. However, when you do apply to jobs, it does look for keywords that are matching in between your profile and the job posting. So if somebody has very specific things that they're looking for in the job posting, it will try and match your profile. The better of a match your profile, the higher you will be on our candidate scoring, and the easier you will be found by the person who is hiring. So just be aware of that. I would always say tailor your profile to the job posting, but always bring it back after the job posting is taken down to your core profile. Awesome. Well, thank you all very much for joining our webinar today. Any final thoughts, Denon?
I just thought it was insightful, and I think I even learned some things that I can implement as well, like moving forward in my career and connecting with different members. So thank you guys for joining us today.
Awesome.
Thank you.
For having us.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.